The issue of rights and responsibilities is one that repeatedly comes up when arguing antinatalism. Some pronatalists argue that one has an obligation to have children. Others argue that there is no obligation, but that people have the right to decide to have children or not to have children, while antinatalists often argue that no one should have the right to reproduce. Philosophical positions which infringe on certain freedoms are often instinctively denounced as being fascist or totalitarian. How dare anyone tell me what I can and can't do with my life? However, procreative rights don't just affect parents, but also the people who will come into existence. Even if there's no such thing as a person who doesn't exist, it's still important to take the would-be people into consideration when considering procreative rights. If one could foresee a life of the worst horror for a would-be child, it's hardly controversial to say that preventing the conception of the child would constitute a benefit. The idea that philosophies should never infringe on one's freedom and rights seems ridiculous when we consider other ethical obligations and laws that currently exist. We do not consider prohibition of murder, rape and theft to be an infringement on personal liberty. Simply put, when your actions significantly affect the welfare of others, the free country line of argument becomes redundant. If you're going to cause harm, the act needs to be justified. It's often difficult to make ethical decisions, but some cases are straightforward. Let's look at some straightforward cases. Person A prefers rock music to jazz music. Person A has the right to listen to rock music. His preference does not significantly affect others. Person B enjoys rounding people up in his van and cutting their arms and legs off against their will. Person B doesn't have the right to do this. The act significantly affects the welfare of others. Person C likes whipping people, and her friend, person C1, enjoys being whipped. C's actions may affect C1's welfare significantly, but consideration has to be given to the fact that C1 is given permission to be whipped, and as long as that permission hasn't been corrupted, C may have the right to whip C1. Person D wants to inject her child with a vaccine. The child will feel pain and struggle, but is too young and unable to give consent. The act is permissible though due to the presence of an ethical justification, that is, the act will prevent more serious harm. Person E really likes playing roulette, but she doesn't have any money. Her friend, E1, is asleep and has money. Despite E1 being asleep, and therefore unable to give consent, E decides to take her money anyway and go to the casino. E is known to have an optimism bias and feels sure that she will win. She's seen others lose, but is sure that this won't happen to her, and believes that her friend probably won't mind her taking the money. In this example, E is not ethically justified in taking the money. You do not have the right to arbitrarily risk someone else's welfare without the person's consent, even if consent can't be given. Even if he wins at the casino, her decision is still irresponsible and not ethically justified. You may have cottoned on to the fact that the decision to have children can be likened to person E's decision, although in the case of procreation the stakes are much higher and the chances of winning are almost 0%. Even if your offspring live relatively comfortable lives, suffering and death are inevitable features of life. Bringing children into existence, especially in the developed world, also guarantees making another ethical footprint. The resources we need to live comfortably come at an ethical cost, be it energy consumption, food consumption, or the use of technological devices which are unethically produced. And what about the victims of life's horrors? What consideration should be given to them? Looking at child cancer statistics alone should raise some eyebrows about the game that people who procreate willfully play. In the UK, 1 in 500 children develop cancer. That equates to 1,600 children each year. What exactly can one point to that justifies this? If you were suddenly transported to a divine dimension and could buy aspects of life using child cancer as currency, would you really be willing to give 1 in 500 children cancer in exchange for X Factor, your gym membership, your positive emotions, or your favourite football team winning? How would you explain to those 1,600 innocent children each year that they have to go through physical and psychological trauma just because people enjoy waving their Union Jacks at an unelected ruling elite? Does that really sound like a fair trade-off? Bringing children into this world guarantees harm, be it harm suffered by the individual or harm created by the individual. This being the case means that reproducing demands justification. Pronatalists are ethically obliged to justify their decisions. They must demonstrate the benefits of having children over not having children, or show how not having children is ethically problematic. In a world of disappearing resources, overpopulation, and more than 150 million children who could be adopted, a rational defence of procreation is all but impossible. In conclusion, it's my contention that people don't even consider these ethical questions before reproducing. In large, this is because of an erroneous view that life is generally a good thing for the majority of people. In the next video, I'll look at the quality of lives, why personal assessments of happiness and satisfaction are unreliable, and why our lives really are a lot worse than we think they are.